Destiny. Externalists believe that there exists a so-called lot or destiny. According to fatalism, each of us has a fate, which we cannot change, and about which we can do nothing. As they says, whatever will be will be. In this philosophy, the agent that determined destiny is not, as in the theistic position, a personal God, but rather a mysterious impersonal power called fate, which transcends our understanding, and hence our ability to persuade or manipulate. In Buddhism, there exists no such destiny. In fact, Buddhism considers this as a way, or a path of going. Our destiny issues from our character from our habits from our acts, and our acts from our thoughts. And since thoughts issue from the mind, the ultimate determinant of our destiny, in fact, the mind is the only creator Buddhism recognizes, and the power of the mind, the only significant power in the world. As Milton, an English poet in the 17th century, says, the mind can make a heaven of hell, and a hell of heaven, if we think good thoughts. Our acts cannot be bad. By thinking good thoughts, we will produce better actions, develop better habits, mold better characters, and inherit better destiny. According to the Sanjiti Sutta, in the long discourses of the Buddha, there are 5 gati, destinies, 11 accumulated habits. In the Surangama Sutra, Volume 8, the Buddha taught on accumulated habits as follows. First, habit of craving. Habits of craving, or habits of greed, or covetousness results in the cold hells. The Buddha reminded Ananda about the habit of greed as follows. Habits of greed and intermingled scheming, which give rise to a suction. When this suction becomes dominant and incessant, it produces intense cold and solid ice where freezing occurs, just as a sensation of cold is experienced when a person draws in a blast of wind through his mouth. Because these two habits clash together, there come into being chattering, whimpering, and shuddering, blue, red, and white lotuses, cold and ice, and other such experiences. Second, habits of anger. Habits of hatred or hatred results in emasculation of sex organ. This is one of the 10 causes and effects. The Buddha reminded Ananda about the habit of hatred as follows. Habits of hatred, which give rise to mutual defiance. When the defiance binds one without cease, one's heart becomes so hot that it catches fire, and the molten vapor turns into metal. From it produced the mountain of knives, the iron cudgel, the tree of swords, the wheel of swords, axes and halberds, kich, and spears and saws. It is like the intent to kill surging forth when a person meets a mortal enemy, so that he is roused to action. Because these two habits clash with one another, there come into being castration and hacking, beheading and mutilation, filing and sticking, flogging and beating, and other such experiences. Therefore, the thus come ones of the 10 directions look upon hatred, and name it sharp knives and swords. Bodhisattvas should avoid hatred, as they would their own execution. Third, habits of arrogance. Habits of arrogance or conceit results in blood rivers and poisonous seas. The Buddha reminded Ananda about the habit of arrogance as follows. Habits of arrogance and resulting friction, which give rise to mutual intimidation. When it accelerates without cease, it produces torrents and rapids which create restless waves of water. Just as water is produced when a person continuously works his tongue in an effort to taste flavors. Because these two habits incite one another, there come into being the river of blood, the river of ashes, the burning sand, the poisonous sea, the molten copper, which is poured over one, or which must be swallowed, and other such experiences. Therefore, the thus come ones of the 10 directions look upon self-satisfaction, and name it drinking the water of stupidity. Bodhisattvas should avoid arrogance, as they would a huge deluge. See 10 causes and 10 effects. Fourth, habits of lust. Habit of sexual desire, or lust grows into a habit, because of sexual intercourse, in which two people caress each other, thereby producing heat that in turn stimulates desire. This is like the heat caused by rubbing the hands together. Adultery results in the iron bed, the copper pillar, and the 8 hot hells. The bed stands for sexual desire, and the pillar for the partner, on whom the sinner depends, to stimulate his sexual appetite. The Buddha taught habits of lust and reciprocal interactions, which give rise to mutual rubbing. When this rubbing continues without cease, it produces a tremendous raging fire, within which movement occurs, just as warmth arises between a person's hands when he rubs them together. Because these two habits set each other ablaze, there come into being the iron bed, the copper pillar, and other such experiences. Therefore, thus come ones of the 10 directions. Look upon the practice of lust, and name it the fire of desire. Bodhisattvas avoid desire, as they would a fiery pit. Fifth, habit of committing adultery. At the time of the Buddha, there was a man who had the habit of committing adultery, even though he had been arrested a number of times for his misconduct. He did not change his ways. In desperation, his father brought him to the Buddha for advice. The Buddha pointed out that a person who indulges in sexual misconduct creates problems and suffering for himself as well as others. He not only squanders his money and loses his reputation, but also creates enemies for himself. These are serious consequences, often result from sexual misconduct, but they are usually overlooked at the time when it is being committed. Sixth, habits of deceptions. Habits of deceitfulness, or habits of deceptions result in yokes and being beaten with rods. The Buddha reminded Ananda about the habit of deceitfulness as follows. Habits of deception and misleading involvements, which give rise to mutual guile. When such maneuvering continues without cease, it produces the ropes and wood of gallows for hanging, like the grass and trees that grow when water saturates a field. Because these two habits perpetuate one another, there come into being handcuffs and fetters, cangs and locks, whips and clubs, sticks and cudgels, and other such experiences. Therefore, the thus come ones of the 10 directions look upon deception, and name it a treacherous crook. Bodhisattvas fear deception, as they would a savage wolf. Seventh, habits of disputation. Habits of disputation, or habits of litigation. The Buddha reminded Ananda about the habit of disputation as follows. Habits of litigation, and the mutual disputations, which give rise to covering. From them there are produced a look in the mirror, an illumination by the lamp. It is like being in direct sunlight. There is no way one can hide one's shadow, because these two habits bicker back and forth. There come into being evil companions, the mirror of karma, the fiery pearl, exposure of past karma, inquests, and other such experiences. Therefore, all the thus come ones of the 10 directions look upon covering, and name it a e'en villain. Bodhisattvas regard covering as they would having to carry a mountain atop their heads while walking upon the sea. Eighth, habits of injustice. Habits of injustice, or habits of unfairness. The Buddha reminded Ananda about the habit of unfairness as follows. Habits of injustice and their interconnected support of one another. They result in instigating false charges and libeling. From them are produced crushing between mountains, crushing between rocks, stone rollers, stone grinders, plowing and pulverizing. It is like a slanderous villain who engages in persecuting good people unjustly. Because these two habits join ranks, there come into being pressing and pushing, bludgeons and compulsion, squeezing and straining, weighing and measuring, and other such experiences. Therefore, the thus come ones of the 10 directions look upon harmful accusations and name them a treacherous tiger. Bodhisattvas regard injustice as they would a bolt of lightning. 9th, habits of lying. The Buddha reminded Ananda about the habit of lying as follows. Habits of lying and combined fraudulence, which give rise to mutual cheating. When false accusations continue without cease, one becomes adept at corruption. From this there come into being dust and dirt, excrement and urine, filth, stench, and impurities. It is like the obscuring of everyone's vision when the dust is stirred up by the wind. Because these two habits augment one another, there come into being sinking and drowning, tossing and pitching, flying and falling, floating and submerging, and other such experiences. Therefore, the thus come ones of the 10 directions look upon lying and name it robbery and murder. Bodhisattvas regard lying as they would treading on a venomous snake. 10th, habits of resentment. Habits of resentment, or habits of animosity. The Buddha reminded Ananda about the habit of animosity as follows. Habits of animosity and interconnected enmity, which give rise to grievances. From this there come into being flying rocks, thrown stones, caskets and closets, cages on wheels, jars and containers, and bags and rods. It is like someone harming others secretly. He harbors, cherishes, and nurtures evil. Because these two habits swallow one another up, there come into being tossing and pitching, seizing and apprehending, striking and shooting, casting away and pinching, and other such experiences. Therefore, the thus come ones of the 10 directions look upon animosity and name it a disobedient and harmful ghost. Bodhisattvas regard animosity as they would drinking poisonous wine. 11th, habits of views. Habits of wrong views, or wrong views result in torture. The Buddha reminded Ananda about the habit of wrong views as follows. Habits of views and the admixture of understandings, such as sakkayadrishti, views, moral prohibitions, grasping, and deviant insight into various kinds of karma, which bring about opposition and produce mutual antagonism. From them there come into being court officials, deputies, certifiers, and registrars. They are like people traveling on a road, who meet each other coming and going. Because these two habits influence one another, there come into being official inquiries, baited questions, examinations, interrogations, public investigations, exposure. The youth who record good and evil, carrying the record books of the offender's arguments, and rationalizations, and other such experiences. Therefore, the thus come ones of the 10 directions look upon evil views, and name them the pit of views. Bodhisattvas regard having false and one-sided views, as they would standing on the edge of a steep ravine full of poison, love and desires. There are many different meanings of love. Love as craving, or sexual desire, is one of the major causes of sufferings and rebirth. According to Buddhism, love is understanding. Love does not judge or condemn. Love listens and understands. Love cares and sympathizes. Love accepts and forgives. And so on and so on. Thus, in Buddhism, love has the meaning of selfless love, which accompanies with loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity. Love goes hand in hand with compassion. When we have a loving heart, compassion arises easily in us. Whenever we see somebody suffering, we feel an urge to reach out to help the person ease his or her suffering. To remove or ease another's suffering is the main characteristic of love. Thus, those who is compassionate, loving and forgiving, they really understand the meanings of the word love in Buddhism. In fact, emancipation in Buddhism is not unrealistic. If we know how to focus from selfish to altruistic, and think more about others' well-being and welfare, we have already liberated ourselves. There are two kinds of love: passion love and religious love. Ordinary human love springing from desire, in contrast with religious love, FAPAI. Love inspired by desire through any of the five senses. Ordinary human love springing from desire, in contrast with religious love, FAPAI. Love inspired by desire through any of the five senses. Bodhisattva or religious love, springing from the vow to save all creatures. Bodhisattva love with desire to save all creatures, in contrast with ordinary love. Love and desire means loves that attach to desires or love a family. Love and desire are the stumbling blocks in cultivation. Besides, the sea of emotional love of birth and death is fundamental obstacle to the way. If cultivators feel love and desire, whether for people or objects, it will hinder them from making progress in cultivation. In one word, love and desire are just birth and death, and birth and death are just love and desire. Thus, love and desire are the root of birth and death. If we don't break through the ignorance of love and desire, there is no way we can escape the cycle of birth and death. Sincere Buddhists should always remember that before thinking of the Buddhahood, we should first cut off desire and get rid of love. More than 2,500 years ago, Prince Siddhartha Gautama did just that. Before he became a wandering ascetic monk, sincere Buddhists should always remember that we all are human beings, and human beings surely have emotions, but we Buddhists should not cling to such emotions of love and desire. We should treat everyone equally, showing loving kindness and compassion to all. But we must be careful not to get trapped in the trap of love and desire. Buddhists have no other way to transcend but cutting off desire and getting rid of love. For whatever we are fond of, we love, and whatever we dislike, we hate. So if we don't cut desire and get rid of love, we will continue to go round and round in the cycle of love and hate forever. In the Dharmapada Sutra, the Buddha taught, "It is difficult to renounce the world. It is difficult to be a householder. It is painful to associate with those who are not friends. It is painful to be wandering in the samsara forever, reaching the enlightenment. And let wander no more. Let suffer no more. Whoever binds to craving, his sorrows flourish like well-watered banana grass. Whoever in this world overcomes this unruly craving, his sorrows fall away, just like water drops from a lotus leaf. This is my advice to you. Root out craving, root it out, just like banana grass is rooted out. Let not Mara crush you, again and again as a flood crushes a reed. Latent craving is not conquered. Suffering recovers and grows again and again, just like a tree hewn down grows up again as long as its roots is unrooted. If in any man the 36 streams of craving are still flowing, such deluded person is still looking for pleasure and passion, and torrential thoughts of lust sweep him away. Streams of pleasure and passion flow in all directions, just like the creeper sprouts and stands. Seeing the creeper that has sprung up in your mind, cut it off with wisdom. Common people are subject to attachment and thirst. They are always happy with pleasure. They run after passion. They look for happiness. But such men caught in the cycle of birth and decay again and again. Men who are crazed with craving are terrified like hunted hares. The more they hold fast by fetters, bonds, and afflictions, the longer they suffer. Men who are crazed with craving are terrified just like hunted hares. Therefore, a monk who wishes his own passionlessness should first banish craving. He who is free from desire for the household finds pleasure of asceticism or monastic life in the forest, yet run back to that very home. Look at that man. He runs right back into that very bondage again. To a wise man, the bondage that is made of hemp, wood or iron, is not a strong bond. The longing for wives, children, jewels, and ornaments is a greater and far stronger attachment. The wise people say that bond is very strong. Such fetters seem supple, but hard to break. Break them, cut off desire, and renounce the world. A man infatuated with lust falls back into the stream as a spider into the web, spun by itself. He who cuts off this bond, retire from the world, with no clinging, will leave all sorrow behind. He who has reached the goal, without fear, without craving and without desire, has cut off the thorns of life. This is his final mortal body. He who is without craving, without attachment, who understands subtleties of words and meanings, they are truly a great wise, who bear the final mortal body. Strive hard to cut off the stream of desires, O Brahman, knowing that all conditioned things will perish. O Brahman, you are a knower of the unmade nirvana.